Progressive politics. In the late 1800s, there were many problems with the political system. For example, there were many monopolies. These were powerhouse corporations that dominated in a particular industry. Teddy and Taft came in and began busting trusts. At the same time, people were complaining about working conditions. Labor unions such as the AFL and Knights of Labor were created to protest. These were led by Samuel Gompers. Their demands proved worthy after the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. Immediately, it became a law to have multiple exits and running water in a factory. In order to keep people happy, Teddy created the Square Deal, which consisted of the 3 C's: conservation of natural resources, consumer protection, and control of corporations.
While political change was happening, women earned the right to vote. Along with the passage of the 19th Amendment were direct primaries, where parties would elect their candidate.
Muckrakers played an important role in many of society's changes during the Progressive Era. Not only did they bring big problems to light, but they also influenced people's perception and the government's involvement in these problems. Some important muckrakers and their award-winning works are Ida Tarbell, Upton Sinclair, Lincoln Steffens, and Jacob Riis. Tarbell, with her novel The History of the Standard Oil Company, exposed John D. Rockefeller's under-the-table operations and malignant business methods, which eventually helped dissolve the monopoly. Sinclair, with his novel The Jungle, highlighted the disgusting processes of meatpacking plants, ultimately causing the government to pass regulatory laws for food production, including the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drug Act. Steffens wrote about corrupt city governments and officials in large cities like Chicago in his novel The Shame of the Cities. Riis was a photojournalist who captured the poor living conditions of the middle and working classes in New York City in his collection How the Other Half Lives. Finally, there were other activists like Jane Addams, who supported improvements in the community. Addams co-funded the Hull House, which was a settlement house for European immigrants. Overall, muckrakers played an important part during the Progressive Era.
Racism. Around the end of the 1800s, there was an increase of race issues in the United States. Separate but Equal was a legislative document that stated racial segregation did not violate the 14th Amendment, which granted all citizens equal protection under the law. As long as the facilities for each race were equal, services, facilities, employment, transportation, and other things of the sort could be segregated by race. In 1872, a man named Homer Plessy refused to sit in the Jim Crow car, which led to the case Plessy versus Ferguson. The case referred to state racial segregation laws for public facilities under the doctrine of separate but equal. W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington were activists for black rights. W.E.B. strongly protested lynchings and Jim Crow laws, and Booker T. was the dominant leader in the African community. An event common in the time were lynchings. They were informal public executions to punish black men. Now, there are many things set in place to make sure discrimination does not occur. First, the Urban League is a civil rights organization that advocates on behalf of blacks and against racial discrimination. Secondly, there is an NAACP is a civil rights organization that advocates on behalf of blacks and against racial discrimination.
The Farmers Movement. During the American Civil War, the U.S. used green paper currency called greenbacks. The Grange Movement was founded in 1867 in efforts to improve agriculture and promote the social and economic needs of farmers. The farmers further advocated when they organized another economic market in 1875 called the Farmers Alliance. This alliance organized a cooperative crusade which had adopted the Populist Party platform in 1892 to set out the basic tenets of the populist movement. In 1896, Nebraska Congressman William Jennings Bryan delivered his infamous Cross of Gold speech at the Democratic Convention, which favored free silver. This very man ran for presidency in one of the most dramatic and complex presidential elections in history, the election of November 3rd of that year. He lost to William McKinley by a factor of 5, who thus emerged as the Republican president until 1901.